Hello, listeners. As I'm sure you're well aware of, we're living now in a time of political, social, and economic inequality. A time where good men and women are shut out of the political process, and when voices who are not among the elites try to make their voices heard or to enter this political process, they are slandered, shut down, and let's be honest, rat fucked by the powers that be. And I'd like to, we're going to spend this episode talking to someone who has been on the receiving end of that. We're talking about someone who is a rock musician, an entrepreneur, a film critic, and most recently, a candidate for district attorney of San Bernardino County. I'm speaking, of course, about Tim Heidecker. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure. You know, any media availability presented to me, I'm happy to take it.
You are the, star and subject of a new documentary called Mr. America that recounts, your quest, your outsider political campaign to reach the office of District Attorney of San Bernardino County. Could you talk to us a little bit about the journey that brought you to this political process? How did you get radicalized?
Well, I've always had a clear understanding of the future of the country, where things need to go, and a distilled vision of that. And, sort of on the outside commenting, I had a really strong, powerful, well-received voice of reason out there with my 60-second soapbox program. That was part of a smaller show I do called On Cinema. It was really became sort of the 60-second soapbox platform. Almost like the great Glenn Beck or somebody like that, who just really had the capacity
to face in the crowd.
A face in the crowd. Yeah, I'm just a guy who sees the world in black and white, in the best possible way. Very simple. Things could be so simple if we just did A, B, and C. But I'm also an entrepreneur, and I had a music festival that had an incident, sort of a small accident.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with me. But I was brought in by the San Bernardino, district attorney, this guy Rossetti, who wanted to place all the blame on me, even though it was the fault of the first responders, which I hate to do because I love first responders more than anybody. They're probably my favorite responders, because they're first. But and without them, we'd be in real trouble. But these ones, unfortunately, were just some of the worst. And they caused a lot of people to, unfortunately, to pass away. Young kids too, which is terrible.
You're referring to the Electric Sun Music Festival, in which unfortunately, like you said, 19 mostly teenagers did die of
lack of medical attention from the first responders.
But then you had a municipality seeking a scapegoat, and they chose you.
Yeah, they needed a fall guy, and I got brought in, and I had a terrible defense. This guy Mark Dwyer, who's one of the worst attorneys. Now we find out at the beginning we believed he was up for the task, but he turned out to be a total disappointment. So I ended up taking over. I ran my own defense, and I was found to be completely innocent of all charges. So, but and I could have walked away. I could have said thank you. Go back to my music career. Go back to all of my entrepreneurial pursuits. But I was so offended by this Rossetti and what he had done to me and my friends and family. Of course, people like Axiom and Manuel who have stood by me, and now their reputation's in the gutter because of this situation. So it was obvious to me that Rossetti had to go because this was the most corrupt district attorney that we've ever seen in America, in America's history. So I launched a campaign because, firstly, obviously, for vengeance, to seek retribution and vengeance,
the most noble goal.
Yeah, and that fire grew, and then I realized, well, actually, I am fighting corruption. Finally, somebody's out there actually fighting corruption for real, and we launched the campaign, and we were, in a way, unsuccessful in the sense that we didn't win.
Well, they tried to keep you off the ballot. And they did indeed keep you off the ballot.
They did everything under the sun. And
like the movie shows some of the dirty tricks that they did to you guys to keep you off the ballot, like things like submitting the ballot or getting the names for the.
My campaign manager Tony Newman put an ad in the paper for the town hall debate right? This is a great example. And she put it in. She tells me she put it in a week in advance and paid with her debit card to get the placement, just where we wanted it. And magically, somehow, it doesn't show up in the paper, right? The day before. And, she says it wasn't her fault. We don't know. She doesn't have the receipt because she doesn't keep receipts for that kind of, for debit transactions, because usually that shows up on your bank statement, which is not there as well. But Rossetti has access to all her, any bank accounts she wants. So he could have gone in there and swiped it from the records. I don't know. But, these people are operating on a very high level. They're getting funded from the Chinese. We talked about the China connection in the trial, which was, we see they're responsible for planting some of these drugs on people. And I think if they saw the chance of me becoming elected as a very real threat to their government, really. I could have taken on the Chinese government if I was in power in San Bernardino, we believe.
It's a very timely political film. Recalls to mind, D.A. Pennebaker's The War Room and other classic documentaries like Street Fight about the Newark mayoral election. But it's timely, very much so in this sense as well. We're talking to you in New York State right now, which has just banned many popular forms of vaping, many of the flavored forms of Juuls and other vape products, and they've banned it based on largely a hysterical moral panic and outrage over things like the Electric Sun incident, and unfortunately, 19 people did die of vaping-related
accidental medical malpractice.
They blame those deaths on vaping, and they blame that on you. So, you were really kind of an early figure of someone who's been persecuted for vaping, as we all now are.
It's a First Amendment issue, and in a lot of ways, a Second Amendment issue as well. But we're looking at maybe other amendments as well. But vaping is a form of free speech.
It's medicine.
It's medicine, and I have that's my God-given right as an American to inject anything into my lungs, or I don't know if inject is the right word, but vape anything into my lungs through the use of heat and oil. Through electricity. It's essentially what we're talking about here.
They're taking away the flavors. They're taking away the THC, the CBD, the nicotine, the medicine, and the flavors that the kids need.
Absolutely. And we created a very, very powerful but effective blend. And the technology speaks for itself. And it's a terrific system. I stand by it to this day. It was misdosed, perhaps, in some cases. But
at some point, there's a personal responsibility that people have to take.
Exactly.
For their own health.
Most of them were adults.
Yeah.
And we did have some people under the age of 18, but they, that becomes a responsibility of the parent.
Absolutely.
So the good news is I have no, this is all behind me. There will be no civil charges or anything. So, we're looking at actually repeating, getting the stuff back on the market in some more official way. We'll see. With tinkering with the blend.
Another thing that impressed me about your campaign, you're running for district attorney. That's like, top cop. And, you were one of the first people to run for DA to make a pledge to reduce crime by 100%.
Yeah.
And, you're a third party candidate. You've got the Democrat on one side saying, like, we want more crime. And you got the Republican on the other saying, no, we want less crime.
Yeah.
But the voters see that, and the crime pretty much stays the same.
Exactly. It's a seesaw situation where obviously there's a lot of benefit to having crime. It keeps the cops employed. And a lot of people stopped me and said, you can't bring crime down to 100%. You can't bring it down to 0%. Get rid of it at 100%. Because we're going to have to let go of all the police force, and the jails. We have to close all the jails. I said, well, you might want to keep them there as a preventative measure. So, as an example of this, if we go back, but we want to live in peace and harmony, and that requires there to be zero crime. And the way we do that is by basically saying, if you commit any crime, I don't care what it is, vaping or something like, if it's illegal to vape, if that's the case, if it becomes illegal to vape, which I don't think it should, but if it does, you go to jail for the rest of your life. There's zero tolerance.
Boom.
Done.
But just as important,
no second chance.
But just as importantly, though, if you're falsely accused of a crime like you were, you will not go to jail for the rest of your life.
Not necessarily, no.
It's important to keep.
There's going to be, obviously, it's not going to be a perfect system, and mistakes will be made, as they do in life.
Maybe but
we'll accept that. I think society will learn to accept that hey, we do our best.
Speaking of society, these days, people have to walk on eggshells about, the things
As they
say.
should. I mean, as they should.
Yeah, but when it comes to crime, one of the
Right.
things the movie deals with, it's like a big issue with the crime, at least in San Bernardino, is just there's certain people who do the crimes.
Sure.
And you got to get them out.
Well, that's right, and that starts with a very strong immigration policy. That if you're not for San Bernardino, for example, if you can't sort of trace your family back to the 50s, sort of the golden era of life in America, sort of the 50s, when you have sort of like Happy Days, movie Happy Days.
Yeah.
You have a great I say if you're not from that era, maybe it's time to find another place, another part of you could move to places like New York or LA or where there's more of a tolerance for those kinds of people who have come in recently from wherever. Now, I'm not, I have great respect and love for different cultures. Some cultures don't mesh, let's be honest.
So ultimately,
But if your dad was like a greaser, a guy who loved Bill Haley and the Comets,
if you've ever shared a malt, if your grandparents shared a malt
Right,
together,
exactly.
with 2 straws,
Right.
If you have generational memories of sock hops.
right, drive-ins and even the drive-ins. What's the drive-in where you get your food on a tray at your car, which we don't see anymore, which is
Yeah, we
sad.
should bring that back. That was cool.
Yeah.
You entered this process as an outsider. It was, ultimately unsuccessful, but I think a moral victory for you. Like, what are some of the things, like, for our listeners who are into, activism, organizing, letter writing, things of that nature. What did you learn, like, on the ground running this campaign about, reaching out to the community and organizing people for a political movement?
Well, people have very little interest in who their DA is. I was surprised when I told them I was running. They didn't know who was the DA. They didn't know there was an election coming. So I don't. I think more people should be running for office. I think everybody should eventually. Almost like they have the draft or the conscription in places like Jerusalem. You might want to look into, all men of a certain age have to serve in government at some point.